So I recently made a short in which I said,
honestly, I'd love to be a part of this. I should make a game for this thing.
And while I've been hard at work on My Demon Academia, I think I could use a break. And by break, I mean working on a new game on a new platform that I'm unfamiliar with unrealistic expectations and timetable. Roll intro. So if you made it this far, you're probably aware of the general game plan. I'm giving myself a week to make a game for the Playdate. Now, I need to be kind of reasonable about this, and to be honest, I have had this idea for some time, so I'm not at a complete handicap. I already have the Playdate SDK, I know that the games are made in Lua, which I'm highly proficient in, and I think I know a game I want to make. Wait a second, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. I guess I should explain what the Playdate actually is. The Playdate is this tiny console made by Panic, which are the people that publish games like Firewatch and Untitled Goose Game. It has an e-ink screen, it's USB-C, and of course, it has a crank. The games on here are very unique, and if you love indie games, this thing is pretty much exclusively indie games. Back to development. So like I was saying, I think I know what I want to make. Doing a quick search on itch.io, I can already see that there's not that many Word games for the Playdate. And a lot of them appear to be Wordle clones.
How original.
I'm just kidding, there's no shame in making a port of a cool game for another platform. I just mean that I think there's opportunity here. About 7 years ago, I released an app called Spell Me. Spell Me is a game in which you get a 5-letter word with missing letters and a small letter bank to try to fill them back in. Now, the mobile version of this game had way too much going on. So I think I could basically make a simplified version of this game for the Playdate. And the stupid name I came up with is Spell Me Cranked. And there was a 45% chance that I named this game Spell Me High Voltage in reference to the Crank movie sequel. But I have a bad history of doing my games by naming them poorly, so we're gonna avoid that. So first off, I have a week to make this game, so the scope needs to be pretty small. Spell Me Mobile literally had 9 game modes in total, and that's absolutely insane. We are not doing that. The first release of this game only had 3 game modes originally, so I think that is the right call here. I think a simple timed mode of just like 1 to 2 minutes, 3 strikes, which is a live space mode, and we gotta make a game mode that involves the crank. I don't really have an idea for this yet, but we'll get to it eventually. So we're gonna have 3 game modes, and we're probably gonna wanna like save some stats and high scores. Easy enough. I'm gonna start off by just sketching some designs on what I think the game should look like. Alright, so this is what I've come up with. It doesn't look like much, but game dev is hard and I get distracted. But we got that out of the way. Lucky for me, I could just steal the game dictionary from Spell Me Mobile, which contains a bunch of 5-letter words. But honestly, I have no clue what to do with this yet, so I'm gonna have to look some stuff up. The topics that I need to know about are accessing files, how game graphics work, button input, and of course the limitations of this device. So it's been some time and I've watched a lot of YouTube and I've read a few blogs. Shout out to Squid God Dev and also these people that kind of helped me out by giving me an example via their actual games. I am now a certified Playdate expert. I'm just kidding, but you know, at least I can get some stuff going. So one of the first things I need to know how to do is build the game dictionary. So I actually stole this code, which is like a text file reader, to make sure that it actually would work for me, and it did. So I moved on to reformatting it to do exactly what I needed to do, which was easy enough. I also grabbed some helper functions from my previous games in Lua that are definitely gonna help me with this one. Print list, string to table to string, table shuffle, and table concat. These are all just functions that are gonna help me with string manipulation in general, and also just dealing with tables, which is probably gonna be most of this game. I'm basically gonna break up a random word into its individual parts, and that'll make it easier for me to manipulate later. Working in tables is always easier than like iterating a string or something like that to me, because you know the defined size of a table, so it's really easy to manipulate. So I got that done, and that all went really smoothly. So now I'm actually taking a look at old Spell Me. I do not think that circles were very conducive of a word game. Like I don't know if it screams word game to me. So I'm actually gonna redo the graphics and make it more square-like, kind of like Scrabble towers, to really indicate like this is a word game. And after that was done, that basically took us through day 1. So I tried to display a letter and I immediately discovered an issue. For whatever reason, every graphic I try to import into the game looks too dark. I'm trying to do like a phrase situation with these letters and it's just not turning out right. And that's when it dawned on me that a 1-bit color system means that the screen actually really just displays in black and white. I feel really dumb about this. I should have been paying more attention, but hey, that's what I get for not reading the directions. There's a process called dithering, which allows you to kind of get those gray-like colors. And I spent a little too long trying to get that going, so I just given up at this point. Eventually, I exported all the big letters for like the main word and got it to display, and you know, this feels like progress. I also worked on the mini letters, which also came out pretty easily. I've had this kind of mocked up in Illustrator, so I'm up right now. I then spent some time trying to navigate the small letters. I copied some code from that Brick Breaker style game that I downloaded, and I'm gonna try to implement that into my game to see how it works. I wrote all the letter graphics into a table so that they have indexes, and then all I have to do is have a variable that tracks position, and then I could just iterate through the indexes. I found that you can invert the colors of your graphics, which makes a very easy way to like highlight. I haven't written controller-based UI code in like a really long time, so this kind of proved difficult for me. When you work with mostly touchscreens and like mouse inputs, you never really have to worry about what index something is on or how it highlights. You would just be like, oh, you clicked this thing, you want this thing, you know what I mean? Like it's a simpler process. Eventually, the smartest thing I realized to do was to actually just track the X coordinate and the Y coordinate of where you are, and then I could use those numbers to determine what position in the index you are. Because I wrote the table just like 1 through 10 letters, but visually it's 2 separate rows, that presents a different issue because I can't just be like, oh, add 1. I have to know exactly where it is if you press up or down, left or right, and I want it to loop back around and back and forth. This is when I ran into yet another issue. It's almost like every time I pressed a single button, it was pressing multiple times. I spent hours trying to fix this. So I have the full word displaying, and I also have random letters. The only issue I'm having right now is that the movement is still off. And it turns out that there are 2 separate ways to detect button input. One is called just pressed and one is called is pressed. And I was using the latter, meaning it was basically triggering multiple times because I was pressing the button. Whereas just press actually checks after you've already pressed, which is entirely what I was looking for in this movement. So once I fixed that, I basically fixed all my issues with movement. I also probably could have saved some time here if I had like read the docs or something, but yeah, we don't worry about that. The next problem I had was selection, like actively choosing a letter. I'm using inversion already to show highlight, but I need something else to show selection, and of course selection while highlighting, which is when I remembered about dithering. So I dither on the selection as well, so that you know that letter is already chosen. I also decided at some point that I no longer want to do the return the letters back to you thing that I was doing in previous games. On a touchscreen that made sense, but on a console like this, it didn't really track well. So I actually saved the index of each letter chosen in a table, and then if you select it again, it'll remove from said table. In the original Spell Me, a lot of people had issue with the fact that you couldn't take back a letter once you chose it, so I wanted to address that here in this game and not make that mistake twice. I wrote the drawing function for this pretty intelligently, so it actually knows the status of each letter and how to draw it appropriately. We are so close to making this thing playable. The next thing I did was bring in the word layouts from Spell Me Mobile, which is, you know, exactly which letters get removed. And basically I updated the word display logic to update accordingly. I also then added these removed letters to the letter bank and then shuffled everything around. So I had an idea where instead of me coming up with the last game mode myself, that I would actually ask my audience and see what everyone else likes and what they think. Bring a little interactivity to it all and make a short out of it. So I came up with 3 game modes and I'm letting everyone else kind of decide what they want to see. And this is what each mode would entail.
Game mode 1, battery power. You have 10 seconds to crank as much juice into the battery as you can, and that's how long you get to play before a round is over. Game mode 2, crank combo. A game mode entirely decided by your skills with the crank. Random attributes fly across the screen and you gotta catch yourself the rules. Some may be good, some may be bad. Game mode 3, crank to spell. Instead of having a regular letter bank, you actually just spin the crank on missing letter slot until you spell a valid word. So there you have it.
My personal favorite idea is crank combo mode, but we will let fate decide. So today we need to work on filling in the big word based on the selection made. So how I did this in the original Spell Me is that I kind of had a word that we were constructing, and based on your selection, it would fill back in that word, and then it would eventually compare that to the original word. We don't really have to do that with this because we are storing everything in tables, so I could just compare the 2 tables together. So as you select the letter, it'll replace whatever's happening in that table. Once you have filled out the letter, meaning there's no more stars left, then we can just check the word and see if we got it correct. Or rather, we're going to check to see if we got a correct word. I actually originally made that mistake on the original Spell Me as well, whereas you have to spell the exact word, and that isn't as fun as just spelling a word. So if the 2 tables are the same and you get to proceed, we just call next round. Next round is the function that we actually use at the beginning of the game to generate a new word, new random letters, etc. This is when I realized how the Playdate drawing system actually works. I should have read the instructions. Most game engines allow you to draw an object and then you could just move it around the screen. It handles the literal drawing of the object and then you have to actually manage it, meaning, you can't just leave it on screen, you have to destroy it or you will have memory issues. On the Playdate, you could just kind of continuously draw over the screen. And I really wasn't understanding that. So I made white letters to go over the remnants of what happens after you were done a selection, because basically that outer edge was bigger than a regular letter, so we were getting some weird artifacting, which I later found out is really dumb because I actually redraw the letters every single time anyway, so I might as well just draw a big old rect over all of the letters in the first place. I didn't have to draw them over each individual letter because I'm not ever drawing each individual letter, I'm drawing all the letters. Yeah. But I don't read instructions, so it is what it is. A game mode has been chosen, and it's combo mode. I'm happy about this because I think it's the most unique. But it's also day 5 and we barely got the main game loop going, so we gotta get to work. I also didn't realize that after the first round of the game that the letter header goes away. It wasn't until I was actually reviewing the shorts footage that I realized that it just kind of disappears. So we gotta fix that today. I'm also gonna fix some of the graphics. Some of them look a little off, so I'm trying to adjust that a bit. Make borders a bit thicker, make outlines a little more obvious, that sort of thing. I also need to come up with an actual strategy for combo mode. This is a grind day. We have to start knocking stuff out. So I went to Illustrator and I made the main menu. Of course, I'm relying on the noun project to do all the heavy lifting for me. So I found a heart and I found a claw, and I actually just ended up making the clock myself. I didn't really like all the clocks that were present, so I just made one that kind of fits more cohesively with the rest of the game. So I exported all of that, and then actually the logic for navigating the main menu is pretty easy because we don't have to worry about horizontal inputs, just a simple check on if the index is more than the amount of objects there, or if it is less than, and we kind of just loop back around. And then all I have to do is set the game state to be the main menu, and of course, once you select which game mode you want to play, it has to tell the main game what game mode was chosen, but all of this is easy enough. I once again used inversion to show selection here because we're already using that in the main game, so it kind of just makes sense to keep that logic. I exported the same heart that we use on the main menu really small so that I can use it in the game, and I've had a mock-up of what I want that kind of like title bar to look like in the main game in Illustrator for a few days now, so like that's a pretty easy thing to duplicate. For 3 hearts mode, the hearts will go in the middle. For timed mode, obviously the time is going to go in the middle, and on the right side it's going to be how many words you spelled. On the left side, it's going to be what game mode you're currently in. I was going to manually make the heartbreak myself, but it really wasn't working out the way I wanted it to. So I actually was able to find one on the noun project, and I imported that into Illustrator, kind of shrunk it down so that it fits, exported that as well. So now we have the heart graphic for like when you still have lives and a heartbreak graphic for when you lose a life. Figuring out the logic for the hearts was pretty easy. All I had to do was know what number of lives we have left, and then based on that number, we can then display whether or not hearts are broken. As your lives dwindle, we replace a good heart with a broken heart, and once you're out of hearts, game over. And for now, we just throw you back to the main menu. Now, time is gonna be harder. But I googled some stuff about timing and I actually found this Playdate dev forum post. And it basically said that you can check how much time has elapsed. There's a function called elapsed time and it will basically report to you how much time has passed since the last time you reset the time. So basically in the update loop, I have a function called update time and it checks to see if elapsed time, which is in seconds, is greater than or equal to 1. And I actually then reset the clock so that when it checks again next time, it'll also be from that base 0, like has 1 second passed. If 1 second is passed, we subtract that from the game time internally, and then we just display the current time left. And just like that, I made time mode and 3 hearts mode. I of course had to add in some logic to see if there's a game over, meaning, if you're out of hearts, that's a game over, or if your time hits 0, that is also a game over. But these game modes are basically complete. I then focused on adding items to the menu button. There's no good place to add a skip button on the screen or really a back to main menu. So I added both those things to like the pause menu. For skip, I just call the next round function that generates a new word and a new letter bank. On 3 strikes mode, that'll actually be one of your attempts, meaning you'll like lose a heart. And on time mode, it'll just keep going because you don't actually get penalized for skipping in time mode. And for main menu, I just change the game state and pause all the game logic and redraw the main menu. I then also reset all the game variables so that when you go back into a game, it's a fresh slate. So I narrowed down exactly what the possible rules are for combo mode. So there are 3 categories and 3 rounds. The first one is time elements. You could either have time reset, time addition, or you could have static time. Second round is letters removed, meaning how many letters are we going to take from the word that you have to guess. So there's 2, 3, or 4 letters removed. The final category is what your handicap will be. So that's either you get hearts, punished for spelling something incorrect in the form of a time subtraction, or we remove the ability to use skips. This is pretty much exactly what we did for the mobile version of the game. So actually making the component of a combo mode is easier than making the combo mode selection screen, so I'm gonna work on that. Thankfully, I've made so many little functions and helpers that I can kind of just call the individual parts of the already made game to put together this combo mode, with some slight adjustments, of course. I'm also going to make a splash screen, which will just be the Malachite Game Studio logo and of course a game by Tez Fraser. I know the logo's not going to look great because the logo is various shades of green, but I'm kind of hoping that the lighter shades of green end up being white and the darker ones will obviously be black and it'll look okay. And it kind of worked, honestly. I could probably try to adjust this, but honestly, this is a game very small and I don't think it's worth the time. I tried originally to do my name in like the Playdate font. I didn't love how it looked, so I just exported Game by Tez Fraser in Illustrator in the Open Sans font that I like to use pretty much everywhere. Then all I had to do was add a timer to switch to the main menu after some number of milliseconds. I also designed the button handler functions to be state dependent, meaning when it's in splash screen mode, it'll know to basically ignore all the button inputs, so we don't have to worry about you smashing buttons before the game actually starts or anything like that. I also need a results screen. I can't just keep quitting to the main menu. That's not a cohesive experience. I think I could just tell users what word they lost on, how many words they spelled, and then like have options for going back to the main menu or like playing again. The original game told you how many attempts per word and all the words you tried to spell and whatnot, but honestly, we don't have that kind of time. There's an entire other game mode I still have to complete. So this is definitely what we're gonna go with for now. I thought the main menu still looked kind of bare, and also I never made the card menu for like when you're actually on the Playdate, so I hopped into Illustrator and I took care of both of those things. I also added a quit round function to the menu because now that we have a results screen, there's a landing page to go to. And as such, I also changed it so that at the end of the round when game is over, it goes to the results screen. While playing, I actually kind of noticed that there were some obvious words missing from the dictionary, but I really don't have time to address this much, so I just added them to the dictionary, and maybe later on we'll do a dictionary overhaul, but like I said, we are racked for time. So I started testing out this latest build of the game, and for some reason, the back to menu is not working, and I'm not exactly sure why. Like, this is working perfectly on the simulator. So I did a bit of investigating, and then it dawned on me that I have never once actually seen the back button work on this thing. I just, for some reason, thought that when you're in menus and you have to press the menu and then go all the way back and start from the top, that I just thought it was like a bad design thing. And I've come to realize that my B button is just defective. I have a defective play date. I've had this thing for 6 months. I'm 7 days into development of a game, and I'm just now noticing that my B button doesn't work. Yeah, that's unfortunate. But I contacted Panic and they were really cool about it. And they said, I could ship this to them and then they'll ship me back a new one. But that means I would be without one of these for the time being. So we won't be doing that until the game is fully out. So I have to release today to successfully complete the challenge. I did not finish combo mode yesterday. So first I'm gonna make all the individual graphic parts for the selection mode. There's 9 in total. To Illustrator we go. I'm also gonna make a claw, which is basically just gonna be like a square without the bottom. So you can just draw shapes on the Playdate. That's how I'm doing that top title bar in most modes. So I'm thinking that I can just draw the stem for the claw using the fill rect and just kind of move it up and down. So I'm basically gonna track the claw position and the line position. And then I'm gonna track all the blocks that are flying across the screen that are randomly generated. Once a block hits the location of the claw, we're gonna retract the claw back up. Drawing the claw, surprisingly easy. Also moving the claw up and down. Apparently, you can just track to see if you're moving the crank in a positive or negative direction. And then once I do that, I just kind of add or subtract to the claw position to make it move up and down kind of smoothly. Then all I had to do was give the claw a boundary so that it doesn't go too far to the left, too far to the right, too far up or down. Now I just need to move the blocks across the screen and track collisions manually. I probably shouldn't be using sprites in whatever built-in collision system they have, but I made it this far without reading the instructions. There's no way in hell I'm gonna do it now, right? So basically, I have a table that's tracking all kinds of positions and statuses of the blocks, all that good stuff just to make this happen. And I got this going and working pretty okay, but everything still felt kind of off. I had blocks moving too fast and also too slow. They also were overlapping a lot, which made it look like they're sticking. So I changed the range of speed so that they're a little faster, but don't go as fast as they were going before. And then I also did a logic so that there's only one block per vertical line. That way that they're not overlapping. They are coming in at different speeds, so you still do have to use a little bit of skill to get what you want. And then I just repeat this process for the other 2 tiers of game rules. Easy peasy. I then did realize I don't have a screen that explains what exactly you picked, and I also don't have a screen that explains any of the instructions, so I whipped both of those things up really quick. I also realized that I don't have great indications of right and wrong in-game. So then I whipped up shouts, which are indications of whether or not you're right or wrong. So it says things like, nice job, try again, better luck next time, words of encouragements or discouragements. It'll also tell you if you lost time if you happen to select time punishment in the combo mode. I tested everything out, and honestly, it's getting pretty late at this point. I gotta power through if I want to release on the promised day. I wrote a small blurb on itch.io about the game and its game modes. I took some really fast screenshots and took them off the device. I made the final adjustments to the build files, and I sent it off a little after 11 p.m. I did it. I made a game for the Playdate in a week. So the game has finally come out, so there is a weight off my shoulders. But I think we still need a day 1 update. I realized at some point that I accidentally made the shouts say points instead of seconds for the time punishment. And I also realized from my screenshots on itch.io that it was telling you had a time punishment in 3 strikes mode, meaning I accidentally wrote the logic for that wrong. I also didn't tell people if they got back time for the time addition, so I'm gonna go ahead and fix that too. I also finally read some instructions. So there's a flag you could turn on in your simulator that actually highlights the parts of your screen orange that are currently refreshing. And it turns out that I was refreshing the entire combo selection screen after you decide what you get, which is just still text, and also the mini letters constantly, which is horribly inefficient and needed to be changed. So I fixed those, and actually now I think the game is more responsive. Who would have thought that if you're refreshing the screen literally all the time, that something bad would happen with performance? Who could have guessed it? Who could have told me? Now, there could be more updates in the future, but for now, I think the game is basically feature complete. I do realize in the beginning I said something about loading and saving high scores and stats, but honestly, this is such a quick hit of the game. I'm not sure if I think that's necessary anymore, but if people complain or they want to see the feature, I'll definitely add it eventually. And as I'm doing this video, I actually realized I never really put a tutorial on how to play the game, but I'm sure people will figure it out, right? So now that I've hit the finish line, here are my thoughts. Here's what I liked. Fixed resolutions are cool. It's really nice just to be like, I want something here at this mark exactly. When I do things in apps, there are so many phone screen types and resolutions and aspect ratios that nothing ever becomes exactly right here. So it's nice to just be able to do that and know that on device, on simulator, it's gonna be exactly the same everywhere. It's pretty easy to test changes on a physical device. It's really easy to just side load. And I actually discovered later that there's more than one side load method, but I was using the one where you just kind of drop it on the website, go on your Playdate, and then you could just download it. I'd say development in general was not crazy hard to learn compared to other platforms I've used, so that's also a plus. The ability to invert your graphics makes selection so much easier. That's such a convenient feature, and I'm really glad that they added that in. It was basically just less graphics I have to make. Here's what I didn't like. I had a hard time understanding how the graphics works in general, and the conclusion I came to at the end was that basically you continuously draw over the screen, which is pretty different than what I'm used to. This is a newer platform, therefore there are less resources and less examples online of the things I'm trying to do. I have not found a way to update sideloaded games that isn't just uninstalling the previous version and installing the newer version. Maybe that's something I missed, but that's a little annoying. Considering when you upload a game, you have to put version number and stuff like that, I would think that it would just appear in the update list, but apparently I'm wrong. I haven't made many games controlled by a controller. I'm typically in touches or clicks, and tracking indexes for movement is more annoying than I remember, but honestly, that's not a fault of the Playdate, right? That is a fault of all controller-based movement itself. There's a text editor that they recommend, and it gives you niceties such as the ability to save and it'll like build, load, and reload the simulator for you. But then I found out it's paid, and so I didn't use that. And honestly, it is a little annoying to save your file, then build it, then reload. It only takes a few seconds, but you know, that still is pretty cumbersome. My old engine, it would just, once you save, it would rebuild itself and display the simulator immediately. I kind of miss that convenience. But overall, the question is, would I make a game for the Playdate again? And honestly, yeah, I think I would. I really like the idea of making quick hit games instead of the fairly large games that I'm making now. So Spell Me Cranked is likely not the last the Playdate will see of me. If you want to download the game, it's available for $1 for the next week on itch.io for the spring sale. Links are in the description. And honestly, even when it's not on sale, it's still only $1.25, so you know, buy it anyways. For the record, you do not technically need a Playdate to play the game. You could just download the SD key, pop open the simulator, load the game into the simulator, then play as much as you like. I'm not saying I recommend this. I'm just saying I don't want to hear like, oh, I'd love to play the game, but I don't have a Playdate. No, I kid. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. I only make in-depth videos like this so that you guys can share my experience. So let me know if you enjoyed it. And drop a comment below if you have any questions or comments about, you know, the process. You can find me on pretty much every platform that matters at TesRazor. I post something pretty much every 3 days or so, you know, lots of content coming at you. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.